Welcome back to Lisa's Family Table. One of the things that I absolutely love doing is traveling. I've told my husband I would rather forego the jewelry and go on trips any day of the week. One of my favorite cities is Philadelphia. Number one, they have a thriving Italian market. They have the Reading Terminal, which is a food lover's dream. It would be like being stuck at a candy store overnight if you were a child. And everybody knows about the Philadelphia steak sandwich, but few people know that one of the other popular sandwiches associated with Philadelphia is the pork and broccoli rabe sandwich. It's definitely an Italian dish. Pork is definitely a king. You know, in Italy, pork is king, and they use a lot of the heritage breed pork in Italy. And for the dish that I'm going to make for you today, I'm also using a heritage breed pork. There's different variations of it, and this is going to be my variation of it, is Dinics, which is in the Reading Terminal. They use broccoli rabe, which is what I'm going to use today. Other places, their version uses spinach. So it's really your preference or maybe what you can get availability to. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a 4 to 5 pound pork shoulder. You're going to butterfly it. It's boneless, and butterfly it. What I did in preparation for this is I took that 4 or 5 pound roast and I cut it in half. And I did half earlier so I'd have something to show you. So that only took me a couple of hours. So if I were cooking the whole roast, it's not linear, it's not just double it. You're probably looking at about 3 hours after the roasting period and things like that. So let's go ahead and construct this dish. Let's first start, and again, this is just the half of the pork from the 4 or 5 pound roast. I didn't cook the whole thing because I cut it in half because I really wanted something to show you. Let me wipe my hands off because we're gonna make the rub real quick. The recipe for the whole roast calls for 10 garlic cloves. So I'm gonna put in 4 or 5 of these. And this is really your preference. If you're like a garlic lover, make this your own recipe. And we're gonna put in 3 tablespoons of fresh parsley that I've already diced. But again, I'm halving everything because I've already done half the roast. So I'm just eyeballing approximately half of it. I'm putting some rosemary in because I like the freshness of it. Now, some people don't care for rosemary. It can be a little too piney for you. If it's not your thing, don't use it. Right? And then about 3/4 of a tablespoon of fennel. Fennel and pork are perfect partners. So you definitely want the fennel in this dish. I'm using whole fennel seed. If you don't have it, you can use fennel powder. Just be careful, it can be a little overpowering. And then of course, we're going to use half a cup of LSR. So I'm going with a 1/4 cup now. So, because we're halving the recipe. And then we're just gonna rub it on the pork. The thing that I love about this dish too is, even though it's a lot of steps, there are steps that once they're in the oven, it's hands off. The broccoli rabe is just sauteed quickly. It's super easy to do. So we're gonna go ahead and use our mini chopper and just combine all of this. Okay. And it really is that simple. We've made a paste and we're gonna take it out and we're gonna rub our pork and then we're gonna tie it. You can see the herbaceousness of this. It smells delicious. And I'm rubbing, the whole roast, right? So I want to get it on the outside. I left the fat on it. I did not take the fat off because that fat's going to melt. And it's just going to add to the flavor. And you'll see when I pull the finished product out for you that it has a lot of jus with it. And so jus being the broth. And that's going to be great for you to serve on the side with a sandwich, to dip into it. And you can see I did a good job of halving this. I got plenty for this. I'm gonna rinse my hands off. And I'm gonna come back and tie this and we're gonna put it in the oven. The pork is perfect. I'm gonna just try to take it and roll it back up. It's not, because it's not a perfect size roast, it's imperfect, I should say. So we're gonna take it and try to get the string under the center of it. Once you get the center, kind of get it together, it'll stay together better. It also makes your house smell really good. You can smell all the aromas, right? And LSR has black garlic in it. It has roasted garlic. And believe it or not, the garlics don't come together to compete with each other because they are different and they just add additional flavor to this. Okay, almost there. And truly, you're gonna break this down. You're not looking for perfection. The only reason I'm actually tying it is to create evenness in the cooking. So that's the reason I'm tying it. And pork roast these pork shoulders have a lot of natural fat in them. So they more or less kind of protect themselves from getting dried out. If this was a pork loin or a pork tenderloin, you wouldn't have that same fat to protect the meat from overcooking. You know, in pork these days, it's not like when we grew up when they wanted you to, you know, cook pork until it was barely recognizable. You can eat pork at 140 degrees. We'll cook this one hotter because it has all this connective tissue in it. And again, I'm just gonna cut these strings off, wash my hands again, and bring you the finished product as well as the broccoli rabe, and you can see what we're gonna do here to finish this up. We're gonna put it in 450 degrees for about 30 to 35 minutes. Because I'm doing a half a roast, that's gonna take less than the prescribed time for the full roast, and that'll give it a nice crust on the top. Then I'm gonna take it out, put my tomatoes, all my stuff in it, and then I'm going to cover it with foil and cook it until it's fork tender. Put it in here, let it roast while we finish up our sandwiches. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Now, let me show you the finished product. This is absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay. So this is so tender, it's like wanting to fall apart on me, which is a good thing. So I'm gonna pull it out. In Philadelphia, what they do is they cool this down and they put it on a meat slicer. I don't have a meat slicer. So I'm just cutting it up, and I want it to kind of fall apart, almost like a pulled pork. You can call this an Italian pulled pork sandwich. I really wish you could be here. I wish you could smell it and taste it. And I'm really hoping you'll make this because it really is a winner. Okay, so now I've got this in the jus. We're gonna do the broccoli rabe, and then this is gonna come together. I can't wait to show it to you. We've gone ahead and put our pork roast in the oven. We've shredded up the one that we did earlier because we wanted you to see the full experience end to end. Full disclosure in the room here, we've had some tasting, which has been super delicious. And now I'm gonna turn on my stove. I've got a non-stick skillet here. So I've taken my broccoli rabe. It also goes by the name of rapini, or as I mentioned, you could use spinach. I think spinach is not great for this because it carries a lot of water. It's not my choice for this. So I've washed this thoroughly because it's kind of like a leek. It can get a lot of soot and dirt in it. Dried it off in some paper towels, and I've cut it in 1/4-inch pieces. I've got my stove on here, my nonstick pan, putting some olive oil. Okay. One of the things I need to do is I need to roughly chop some of my garlic here. These are pretty large cloves. I'm going to probably put 4 of them. If they were smaller, I would adjust. And again, this is a personal preference thing. So we're just cutting up our garlic, and then we're going to put our Calabrian chilies in there. You want it to be small enough where you're not like getting big chunks of garlic in your mouth. Okay, so I'm going to put this in. Garlic. Beautiful sound, a little sizzle, but not too much sizzle. It's the perfect sizzle. The Calabrian chilies, they have a ton of oil in them, and that oil has flavor. So I'm going to use a little bit of all of it, right? So look at that beautiful oil. It's going to give me a gorgeous color. And these are hot. I mean, no doubt about it. So if you're the faint of heart when it comes to heat, I would choose the red pepper flakes. These are hot. All right, so we're going to do that. And you'll be able to smell this in your house. It becomes aromatic. Everything's just coming alive in the pan, but you've got to be careful because garlic will burn, and once it's burned, it's just no good. It's super bitter. You've got to start again. So now I'm going to dump my rapini or my broccoli rabe in here, and it's like spinach. You're putting it in. It looks like you're putting so much in, but in 2 seconds, it will be non-existent. It'll shrink down into the pan. So do that. You can always put a top on this if you like to kind of steam it a little bit until it kind of shrinks down a bit. Again, be careful with that oil and the garlic underneath that it doesn't burn. I'm going to adjust my temperature down until I get a little shrunk here, until my greens shrink. So you can see this is coming together super quickly. I haven't made it so hot that like most people couldn't tolerate it. Plus remember, you're going to have a layer of cheese, you're going to have the pork, and you're going to have the broccoli on top. So you're going to have lots of things to kind of be a counterpoint to each other. I think that's probably why I love this sandwich so much. And this is just about done. You don't want it to be soggy, but these little crispy pieces here, you want to be able to like go into it with a knife and it to cut through and it's still a little woody. So I'm going to give it a second. What I might do is just throw a top on this and let it steam just a smidge. Let me do that. Grab a top. Put that on like that. And I'm just going to give it about 30 to 60 seconds. I think that'll make those woody stalks a little tender. And what I'm going to do is in the meantime, I'm going to get my rolls out and I'm going to start cutting them. And again, this is so much fun. If you actually can get good French rolls, you could probably get away with not doing this extra step that I'm going to do. But I thought these were a great size. It's from a portion control perspective. And we'll see. I'll let you know if I think the panini press is a great addition to this sandwich. Traditionally, you want that crusty bread, but you still want it to be soft in the center. And you have to, because there's a lot going on in a sandwich. It's got to stand up to the sandwich. If provolone's not your cheese, pick your favorite. So you just put a couple pieces on here. You can put more if you're like a super cheesy lover. Okay, so while we're letting the panini press get warm, our pork roast is getting all those wonderful crispy bits on it that we were looking forward to. And this is why you don't put the other accoutrements in here first, because you want all of that to get crispy and tender, get all that, because that's flavor, brown, gold, and delicious. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we've got our onion. This is just, because this is half the roast, I'm only putting one, it was a large onion, so this is only half of it. Again, if you have two smaller onions, you would use that, just adjust, but you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And then the hand-crushed tomatoes here. So you just take them, and they can just like get everywhere. So just kind of like put it deep inside the pan before you start squeezing, or you're gonna be wearing it. Okay, then we're gonna put a little wine in here. Wine makes everything better. Okay. And then I'm using chicken stock, my homemade chicken stock. But you can use box stock. If you use a box stock, just use an unsalted one. That would be my advice. I don't use pre-salted anything because I like to control the amount of salt. And it's not because I don't like salt. I love salt. Oh, I forgot one more thing. I got to cover this with foil. And then we're going to put it back in. And we're going to reduce the temperature to 325. And we're going to let it cook until that's tender. And as I mentioned before, because that's the half a roast, that took about a little bit more than 2 hours. Again, the litmus test is when I could take a knife and kind of poke it in it and it gives way. Okay, so our broccoli rabe should be ready. Let me see what we got here. Looks terrific. It smells really good. Nice and tender. Okay, time to build. Okay, we're going for the pork. It's going to be delicious. You can get all kinds of little bits and pieces. Stir it around, get all that broth you worked on so hard. Make sure your pieces are small enough that you're not going to bite into the sandwich and it all come apart in your mouth. I think I'm really liking this idea of the press too, because I think it's going to re-warm everything through. Okay. This is really perfectly tender, not too tender. I don't like soggy vegetables. Okay, put this on. Are we ready to go? Are we ready to go in the press? Okay, here we go. I think this is a great idea now that I'm doing it. It's pretty hot. There's so much juice on the sandwich, it's coming off everywhere, which is kind of a good sign, I think. Okay, here we go. And you gotta let this thing do its own little business. Let me clean up after myself. So the juice is coming off in there. It looks really good. Oh man, it's pretty. Okay, and I may just rotate this just a little tiny bit just so I can get better, grill marks around. And then we're gonna cut it and we're gonna plate it, and it's gonna be so beautiful and delicious. I'm just gonna cut this and then we're gonna taste this sandwich. It's hot, so I'm taking a paper towel because it's really screaming hot. It'll be good to visit Philadelphia and Memphis. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do a dip. It's so hot. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Oh my God. I really like the panini. I think it gives an extra texture to this. It's a must dip sandwich. It's worth the mess. The heat's there. It's not overbearing. The sandwich is delicious. The pork is perfect. The broccoli rabe, I did add a little salt to it. You may not have seen that, but I did add a little salt, just needed to pinch. Dial back the heat if you're sensitive to it, or omit it, put some red pepper flakes. It's not overbearing on the garlic. The cheese is definitely a compliment. Plus it is a messy sandwich. You almost need the cheese to hold it together. And I say, don't skip the jus. Definitely do a dip. And if you're wanting to bring a little Philadelphia into your house, from Lisa's family table to yours, we hope you try this recipe today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you can get notification of our upcoming videos. We post every Thursday and you won't want to miss a single video.